A leading sex ed group funded by a firm that markets an anal play web series is pushing in public schools a 6-part program featuring a team of described asperts teaching children the joys of butt love, all in their words. Great. It's not enough that your kids face indoctrination and political bullying in the public schools. Now they have to fend off groups of progressive anal justice warriors eager to get into their pants. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the largely disgusted Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that brings you this kind of craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. As you can see, I've got my Freedom Tumbler, and you should too. Just head over to the Patriot Club. That's patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us to make a one-time yearly tax-deductible donation. We'll ship you one of these little bad boys. It makes a great gift for Christmas, and it allows us to fight back against the politically correct forces of left-wing censorship. So do it for Pat. Pat Riot says, do it now. All right, Katie joins us now with a long look at the rapidly declining health of our republic.
Where are my ladies at? This past week has been nothing but posturing, crying, and yah-yahing from the so-called women. From the AOC to the Nancy, and from a soccer player turned squib kicker to a Juno turned male-ish, it's been a week. Let me explain. Seriously, ladies, where are you? Certainly you're not in our mainstream media news because that's being filled by the loudest, brashest, and now man-claiming of the ladies out there. Let's get to it. Tawanda. If you know, you know. Kathy Bates really is superb in fried green tomatoes. 2 thumbs up, Roger Ebert style. But now, to the topic of the day. Where have the ladies gone? We'll get a quick rundown from our celebrities and everyday people before asking where the political ladies are. Don't you worry. Watch until the end and then tell me in the comments which of these non-ladies is the worst representation of being female. I look forward to your creativity. Now we are being told to all climb aboard the transgender train, formerly known as the crazy train, but it's 2020 still and everything must be pushed down your throat. Sorry for the imagery, because capital T truth does not matter to these people. Coming down the tracks is Ellen Page, once a mopey B-rated actress who now wants to go by Elliot Page. The former Ellen wrote on Instagram that she is trans. She's going to use pronouns he, they, and her name is now Elliot. Also, Paige has a female partner. Okay, fine, but Elliot, you better get used to living life as a straight white male. But it's Hollyweird, and you are woke, so it won't matter. You can keep acting in whatever science-denying roles float your boat.
That's all I can ask for.
Golden. Ellen Page, by the way, is still biologically female. Moving on. I didn't address this next lady last week when she was more in the news, but I'm just a poorly and victim-ridden woman, so I get to talk about it whenever I want. Vanderbilt football. Not V for victory, just Y. Vanderbilt University's football team decided to call upon the women's soccer team goalie to be the kicker for the team. Well, for one sort of a kick. Anyway, in their Thanksgiving weekend game. Ever since, she's been in the limelight for her bravery.
At the Tennessee Titans game, another example, David, of girl power as she continues to inspire all the girls and all of us across the country.
Very cool.
But not very cool because she didn't play football. And watching her topple the ball is not inspiring for any woman, much less those who can kick the ball a lot farther and did not run off the field afterward. Here's the so-called kick.
And there she is, wearing number 32, her soccer jersey number, and just 6 days ago was winning an SEC soccer tournament championship in Orange Beach, Alabama. And wouldn't you know it, history is on the field in Columbia, Missouri, as Sarah Fuller is about to put her right foot into a football, speaking volumes to women around the world.
Hold up. You're telling me the kick she's about to do is speaking volumes around the world. This better be a dang good kick.
And the kick down at the 35-yard line, and Sarah Fuller. Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, for crimity's sake. Seriously? I'm embarrassed for her. That kick went maybe 27 yards and then rolled. How is that speaking volumes to anything? Fuller spoke more volumes when she lectured the guys in the locker room at halftime. She told Courtney Cronin that she was pissed at how quiet the guys were on the sidelines and how in soccer they are always cheering. As she said to Courtney, "I just went in there and I said exactly what I was thinking." Because there's nothing more inspirational than a female being red carpet invited to join the football team less than 1 week prior, getting tons of media coverage, and being touted as something bigger than the team, then lecturing the guys as they are down 21-0 against Missouri on an already 0-7 season. You rah-rah! As Fuller said, now let's go win the game as a team. But she first had to say on the Twitter, "Let's make history." She faulted in that tweet and said history instead of herstory. Almost as big of a miss as that kick was. Also, her addition in the tweet of the hashtag play like a girl sentiment is not only overplayed, in this very instance, it's offensive. I don't want everyone thinking that crap kick is the best the female gender can offer. But enough on Fuller. Vanderbilt's decision was almost as nutty as the woman in our next example of missing ladies. This worse than Karen self-proclaimed teacher is clearly unhinged as she yells at peaceful protesters of the lockdowns in Bend, Oregon. "I just wish she was my kid's teacher," said no one ever. That lady is a teacher of children. Someone who's supposed to be a role model for our children. And then we have our politicians who biatch and moan about how teachers don't make enough money. Meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi is making all the monies and keeping it for herself, not allowing us average Joes and Josephines to survive. She admits it now regarding the stimulus plan. She would not pass a stimulus plan for months, but now that Joe Biden may be president, everything is hunky-dory. This way, the Democrats can take credit for everything while continue to blame President Trump for everything else. Duh.
Look, I'm going to tell you something. Don't characterize what we did before as a mistake, as a preface to your question, if you want an answer. That was not a mistake. It was a decision, and it has taken us to a place where we can do the right thing without other, shall we say, considerations in the legislation that we don't want. It is, and as I say, with a Democratic president committed to a scientific solution for this, with the idea that we will have a vaccine, it's a complete game changer from them.
Oh, yeah. Fear not, friends. The Democrats have tapped into having Nancy Pelosi as candidate to be Speaker again, though she promises this will be her last term. Let's be honest. She could easily be dead in 2 years. She's already 80, though her plastic surgery varies in age, and we know her hair is but a few months old. Right?
I think that that this salon owes me an apology for setting up.
Well, all of this comes about the same time we learned that next year the House plans to have 101 work days, which is a 25% reduction. Woohoo, more salon days for Nancy. Such a reduction in work should mean a 25% reduction in pay, but it won't. And it would be okay if they did reduce it because our most honorable, prestigious, and Looney Tune of the representatives will be just fine. Yes, you Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. AOC has her own merch line in the capitalist society she hates so much, so she can just hawk a few more shirts and she'll be able to get by. Or she could sling a few more drinks, whichever works.
All right, I'm glad I didn't lose my touch.
You didn't lose your touch. You're still definitely a bartender.
I'm very proud of that.
But before we analyze her merch, let's talk about how she can't stop crying. She can't stop, won't stop, and she's trying to compete with Donald Trump for a tweeting title. The newest rant included her bartending and waitressing commentary, along, of course, with the hawking of her merch. So she tweets out how people are freaking out at the expense of her new merchandise, which includes a shirt that simply says, "Tax the rich." The shirt costs $58, down from $65, so naturally people should be happy. It's such a steal, in more ways than one. Yes, the socialist who hates capitalism wants you to buy a shirt for $58 plus $5 in shipping to wear a shirt that says, "Tax the rich." Ponder on that for a moment. I can't blame her. If AOC wasn't a hypocrite, what would she be? She needs to wear the most expensive pantsuits from Hillary Clinton's closet. She deserves it. Or something. In case you were wondering, here's some more of her merch line. For $65, you can get a green hoodie that says, "The Green New Deal." It has AOC written on the wrist, probably to indicate where you wipe your tears from all of the crying her supporters do. If you can't afford that piece of crap, then just spend $27 to get a Pocahontas reminiscent t-shirt featuring AOC trying to figure out how high the sycamore will grow as she listens to the wolf cry to the blue corn moon. But beyond the colors of the wind, pay $27 to wear a t-shirt to support canceling student debt. Rather than pay the $27 toward your actual student debt, buy a crappy white t-shirt so you can wear your angst about being in debt. It's the AOC way. And later the same day, as being a huckster, AOC cried about crying in a walk-in cooler. In a tweet, she claimed that Republicans make fun of her for having been a waitress, and then she basically confessed that she doesn't know the difference between seltzer and sparkling water and could be found crying in the walk-in cooler when she was a waitress. Her tweet shows how she thinks only Democrats have had working-class jobs. In another tweet, she claimed that her job was physically difficult, and she didn't have good health care most of her adult life. She forgot to mention her lack of good health care coincided with Obamacare being available almost that entire time. But details. Put bluntly, she thinks she's better than you. These are the women of the week, my friends. These are the so-called ladies we have fighting to show strength and represent the courage of women. The ones who yah for all of us. What a sad state of affairs. These women are united in complaining about men and the double standard, which does not help anyone for anything. Remember, ladies, be your own person, and certainly be better than these non-ladies. Until next time, stay healthy, America.
Okay, joined now by Alex Newman, our international correspondent. Alex, thanks for joining us as always.
Thanks for having me, Duke. Great to be with you.
Well, we have a really interesting story, and this is one actually, Mom and Dad, if you have kids in the house or kids in earshot, you might want to remove them for this 10-minute segment because it's really important stuff, but it's really, really graphic. We have a sex education provider. This is a group that has got their fingers in many aspects of your kid's sex education, all of this stuff going on in public schools. And they're now, this lobbying group now touts their sponsor, which is a company designed to making anal sex normative, to encourage anal sex exploration, to teach children how to do it and ways to do it, to provide all sorts of sexual advice with regards to, in their words, the butt. Seducing the butt is one of their mantras. Talk about who this group is and how they're tied to the lobbying group.
Yeah, thank you, Duke. And this story is just, it's so gross. You really should have a bark bag handy. It is mind-blowing. So SIECUS, it used to be the Sex Information and Education Council of the United States, I believe, basically the arm of the Kinsey Institute to spread this disgusting propaganda into the public schools, founded decades ago. They have now formed a partnership with a company called B-Vibe. And this is a company that specializes in sodomy. They produce products to encourage sodomy, to supposedly make sodomy fun. They produce webinars, including this one that they were advertising through SIECUS. And so this company, this anal sodomy company, is providing now sponsorship of SIECUS. And so we have a source who was getting emails that are sent out to sex educators all over America, right? These are the people who work in government schools and they teach your children how to have safe sex. And the emails openly say, hey, we're sponsored by V-Vibe or B-Vibe. Go check out B-Vibe. And then you go there and it's like, hey, here's a 6-part webinar about anal sex and all the rest of it. It's absolutely gross. And I mean, it's not surprising to people who know about this stuff, but I think people who kind of just see this at a distance would be shocked and appalled by some of the stuff that this company does and some of the stuff that SIECUS is helping them promote.
Yeah, and this is targeting young kids, right? This is for high school kids, middle school kids. This is a revolution in sex education that's based largely on the work of Kinsey. And I know you've done a lot of work on that. Tie this to what the Kinsey Institute was doing.
Yeah, so for those who aren't familiar with Alfred Kinsey, he's really the father of kind of sex education as it exists today. And so many decades ago, back in the 1950s, he was doing so-called sex research funded by the Rockefeller Foundation and also with links to the Central Intelligence Agency. We found out from Dr. Judith Reisman, who's probably the world's top expert on this. And we've interviewed her for The New American. I interviewed her for a very in-depth investigation I did for the Epoch Times, and she knows more about this guy than anybody. She's written multiple books about him, and one of the things that he did was he did this sex research, and he came out with these 2 books. It was Human Sexuality in Females, or Sexuality in the Human Female, Sexuality in the Human Male. Well, in one of these, the one of the Human Male, he had these graphs. And what these data tables showed, I think it was table 34, there was also 35, is that Kinsey's so-called researchers were raping little children, some of them as young as 5 months old, 9 months old. And as you look at these data tables, you start realizing what a horrific thing you're seeing. They say, you know, they were stimulating these little babies, these children, for hours on end, in some cases, 24 hours, and then they were counting the number of climaxes that these little babies had. So this is basically child rape on a massive scale. We're talking hundreds, probably thousands of children. And Kinsey gave them stopwatches and trained them how to time how long it was taking between climaxes. And then from these disgusting so-called experiments, they would look at these children and they'd scream and then they'd cry and then they'd pass out and they'd say, oh, look, they're climaxing. And so from this, Kinsey deduced that children must be sexual beings from birth. Therefore, we need to start teaching them about sex as soon as we possibly can, preferably in kindergarten. And hence, SIECUS was born, this disgusting organization that we're talking about, and the whole movement to brainwash children with sex education in public schools.
And after the break, we're going to talk about why anal sex, right? Why anal sex? As a little preview of that, a couple things that comes to mind for me. One, anal sex is a way of breaking down the evil gender of male and female, right? Not everybody has a penis, not everybody has a vagina, but everyone has, and in their own terminology, a butt. We'll call it an anus. And so this is a really insidious way to make your kids turn to a kind of sex that's unhealthy, that's dangerous, as a way of social engineering. We'll pick that up right after the break. Alex, one of the most absolutely despicable aspects of this SIECUS group is to tell the listeners what's their new mission statement. They rebranded. Now the anagram of their name doesn't really even mean anything. What does SIECUS stand for?
Well, they tell you it's actually now SIECUS, Sex Education for Social Change. And they're not kidding.
Sex education for social change. Mom and Dad, are you listening to this? This is not about biology. This is not about health. This is not about teaching your kids to protect themselves sexually. If we wanted to teach your kids to protect themselves sexually, we would be warning them away from anal sex. We are encouraging it now, not because it's safer or healthier, but because it is sociologically useful to the progressive left. I mentioned at the end of the last segment that boys have penises, girls have vaginas, but everybody has a butt. And if you can transform sex away from traditional heterosexual normative sex to anal intercourse, you've obliterated gender and sex distinctions. That's part of what they're doing here. Also looming behind this is the incredibly ubiquitous, incredibly powerful LGBTQ organizations and their propaganda, which is to make heterosexual sex seem dangerous. Heterosexual sex might give you a baby. And in the modern day sex education, a baby is akin to a virus. You get pregnant. The purpose of sex is not conception. The purpose of sex is to avoid conception. And what's the one surefire way you can make sure you can have all the sex you want, all the penetrative sex you want, and never encounter a baby? Anal intercourse.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Duke. And there's a whole nother component to this as well, and that is population control. When you look at the major foundations, the major organizations, including the United Nations, by the way, that are promoting this agenda, this indoctrination of children into this anything goes kind of sex, if you want to call it that. They have an obsession with reducing the number of people on the planet. And they know the more children they can persuade to be homosexuals, transgenders, whatever, pick your thing, the more people aren't going to settle down, aren't going to start a family, aren't going to raise children, aren't going to pass on cultural values to the next generation. There's a very deliberate and a very insidious agenda here. And it's not very hard to find. Now, I think Kinsey was just a pervert of the highest order. He just thought, all these social mores surrounding sexuality, the idea of, we save that for marriage, that's all just outdated, and we should just have anything goes. But there are other agendas here, too, and I think population control is one of the key ones. You mentioned, you don't produce babies using sodomy, and that's true. I think they deliberately promote it for that reason. In fact, they've been very clear about that. And what we're seeing now, you mentioned the blurring of gender lines. We've reported this at the Newman Report at Freedom Project Media on many occasions. 27% a couple years ago of California's children between 12 and 17 now identify as gender non-conforming, right? So they're boys who don't accept that they're boys, girls who don't accept that they're girls. Something like 50% of millennials, depending on what poll you look at now, identify as some letter in the LGBT rainbow spectrum, right? These are all young people who are not going to end up having children. They're not going to end up raising a next generation. And that really provides a clean slate for the social engineers to come in and do whatever they want. It's extremely dangerous. And I think it's literally a threat to our civilization, right? It's more than just perverted sex and these kids getting diseases and ruining, their future families. It's even more insidious than that.
Yeah, the flip side of population control is anti-family. This is 100% anti-mom, dad, and children. This is an attack on this fundamental building block of culture and civilization, and theologically. This is a complete attempt to erase that. We've got about a minute or so left, Alex. Give us some specifics of this program. What kind of things are they offering students, young kids, to make them more interested or more willing to perform anal intercourse?
Yeah, so they have this 6-part anal sex webinar that they're offering by a lady called, I think, Luna Matata or something like that. And as you read through it, different things that you can do, why it's so fun, and one of the worst things I think Christians will be appalled is they're mocking Christmas, right? They say it's we're going to celebrate Buttmas instead of Christmas, right? Christmas is a time for Christians to celebrate the birth of Christ. These people here are making jokes about sodomy, and these people are financing the organization that's providing the sex education, that's lobbying our state legislatures and even our federal government to push this on younger and younger children. They hate Christianity, they hate traditional values, and they are indoctrinating tens of millions of children all across this country.
Even as Christmas pageants and even Merry Christmas is being scathed, being absolutely eradicated from our public schools, they're welcoming in Merry Buttmas, right? Let's use Christmas time to promote sodomy. Alex, it's almost impossible to make this stuff up. We appreciate your time today.
It's time for some real education. Richard Jackson is an American artist born in 1939 in Sacramento. Since the 1970s, Jackson has developed in his art an interrogation of painting that combines conceptual procedures, humor, and extreme disorder. As part of his retrospective at the Orange County Museum of Art, Jackson installed Bad Dog, a giant temporary sculpture of a black Labrador retriever urinating yellow paint onto the side of the museum.
And let's be very clear here. If you want to check out Jackson's paintings, go ahead. I find them uninteresting and overrated, but he's largely known not for that. I mean, these art installations here, I think, are what the big deal. Take a look at this. And, I want to be very clear. This isn't art. What is there that if the dog were real size, nobody would call this art. It's a completely show some of the other pictures, Mike. It's not like the dog is created hyper realistically. It's not like the dog in and of itself is some great aesthetic creation of the canine. It's not terribly well articulated. It's just big. If it were the size of a regular dog, nobody would care. And so it's an art installation, which is not necessarily the same thing as art. But it is interesting in the sense, perhaps more than his paintings are. What's interesting about it is the issue, and what we see this is this. It no doubt it gets people talking. No doubt it makes a political statement. There's no doubt that it's people are fascinated with giant things, right? They just always have been. And you could argue the political message here is one that's actually quite just and meaningful, right? You've got a dog who's got its leg lifted, and he's literally peeing yellow paint to represent urine. He's literally has a mechanical device inside that allows him to spray the side of the building with pee to mark his territory, so to speak. And the image might be kind of tongue-in-cheek, that in a museum full of postmodern art, which really isn't art, maybe the dog is striking a blow for a return to real art. Don't know what Mr. Jackson was thinking, but it's the size is impressive. The political statement is there. It's just art's really we've wandered a long way from the path of art in this culture.
All right, before we go, just a quick reminder that the best way to keep up with our various shows here at Freedom Project is to follow us on Parler. So take 10 seconds today, get out your little phone, and start following at Duke Pesta, at Katie, and at Freedom Project. Now we want to take a moment to show some love to the various Patriot Club members who support us. And today we're going to give a shout out to Rachel from Colleyville, Texas. Rachel, thank you so very much for following us all the way there from Texas. And if you're a fan of the show, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation to support our Patriot Club, and we're going to send you an awesome tumbler as a little thank you gift. All you have to do to sign up is visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. Now we're going to wrap things up with the fun fact of the day. The first woman to score in a college football game was Liz Heaston. She kicked 2 extra points for Willamette on October 18th, 1997. So in 2020, it's less impressive for a squib kick.
Are we talking the first woman to score in a football game or the first cheerleader? Because that completely skews the numbers. And that's going to do it for this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.